Welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I'm Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360. He is Steve, Xbox Live Stevavitch. And E3 has come and gone in episode 228 today, June 15th, 2021. There is quite a bit to cover, so we are going to go right into our topic of the day, which is our E3 2021 recap. Without further ado, I think we should start off with kind of our high-level thoughts as to what we thought overall of the show. Start with you, Steve.
Well, I think this year I can actually say Xbox led the pack. They had a great show. I think the last few years, Xbox has kind of trailed off. I mean, they've had a decent show, but it wasn't anything striking. It wasn't, we weren't going home bragging and jumping up and down. And this time, I think they really they held their own. I think that they had like the best presence of the entire show. Either that or like a lot of the other showcases had a lot to talk about, but Microsoft sure did. So I think they did fantastic.
Very cool. What about some of the other folks?
Wasn't too impressed. It was literally like Microsoft and Squaresoft, and that was about it for me. The rest of the stuff I wasn't really too interested in. It wasn't my thing, so not very memorable for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because Sony elected to not participate in E3 2021 this year, and they also haven't really been doing that, I think, over the past year or two. And it's kind of a bummer. I don't know. For me personally, E3 has always been this kind of coming together, no matter who you work for or what game you're working on, whatever it is. It's like you kind of rally under this banner known as E3 to be able to show off what you've been working on and have that sense of camaraderie and inspiration, that sort of thing. So it's weird because you know that Sony's going to have some sort of Sony State of Play conference or something, so that way people don't forget about them, and they'll probably have it like next month or something.
Yeah, say early July or something.
Yeah, I don't think they've had like any kind of announcement date,
right?
But we all know it's coming. Having said that, though, I agree. I think Microsoft definitely had a nice, strong showing. I think that their acquisition of Bethesda definitely helps to round out more of their staple of games. And I made a list of the various games. I feel like you and I were pretty much on the same page in terms of which games interested us. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think with the exception being like Psychonauts. You were like, oh, Psychonauts. And I went, oh, Psychonauts.
Yeah, you didn't play the first one. Yeah,
I haven't played any of the Psychonauts, and that one just doesn't really appeal a whole lot to me. It has definitely some character to it, but definitely not something that's in my bag. So, you know what it reminded me a lot of? Maybe it was just the animation style, or I can't place my finger on it, but it did remind me of Ratchet and Clank. I don't know if it was the colors or what it was, but something about it did remind me of Ratchet.
I would say it's probably in a similar genre of it being kind of like a 3D platformer styled game. But the games themselves are actually quite different in terms of the approach to everything. I'm saying that because you haven't played the first game, so well, I suggest that we go down this list that I have curated.
Okay.
From both Microsoft as well as Square Enix, and then maybe even sprinkle in some Nintendo at the end of this as well. Before I get started, though, I was really surprised at how Namco, from my understanding, like I was trying to look at that, like what they had to show on YouTube. I only saw one game.
Yeah.
And I mean, that game looks like it was kind of interesting, but I was shocked because Namco is usually just brimming with all kinds of different titles.
Yeah, man.
Did you look as well?
I didn't see anything from Namco. I didn't search specifically for Namco. I was looking for a collection of all the showcases. Like, for example, Take-Two also had something, but it was mostly just like a panel talk. And I really wanted to see some games. I didn't really want to sit there and listen to a panel. I'm sure they had a lot of interesting things to say. My attention span didn't allow it, so I didn't watch it. But I was going like fast forward. Okay, there's gonna be nothing.
You're figuring it was cool. Like maybe it was like a pre-show to like the actual unveiling of the game lineup.
And I remember seeing Namco in the schedule. Mm-hmm. And then so when I figured they would pop up in the search, and so when they didn't, I had to actually look for it specifically. I mean, I forgot to look for the Namco. I figured it would pop up in like one of the E3 highlights or something, and I just didn't.
Yeah. Well, let's go down this list because there's actually quite a few of them that were actually pretty new. There were some that were rehashed from the previous year. We just got to see more of those games, which is totally fine. I mean, I was very much into that. I think that was one of my takeaways regarding the Xbox press conference was that it wasn't like there was like this completely brand new lineup. And what was actually kind of surprising to me was how there were certain games that were announced last year that didn't get any screen time this year. Like Perfect Dark, for example, was unveiled that was the game that the Initiative, which is one of their brand new studios down in Santa Monica, is working on. I was really surprised we didn't see anything from Perfect Dark.
Right.
Another example is Forza Motorsport. I think they're 8 or 9. I'm not sure what number they're on for the motorsport 8. Side. But if you recall, they did have gameplay footage of that last year.
Right.
And this year they had just a fleeting 2 or 3 seconds of gameplay as Phil Spencer was like mentioning the title that being in the works as well. In fact, I think it was smart of him to put that in there just because after watching Forza Horizon 5, I think everybody had the question, wait, what? I thought they were working on Forza Motorsport. What's the deal? And so I'm sure that game will come out next year. They're going to do the typical flip-flop thing, which is great. I really like that kind of setup. But it was just kind of funny how they had games like that were announced or talked about or perhaps even like provided a glimpse of last year that was not shown. They're still in development, but I don't know. I thought that was surprising, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked. I mean, that was one of the better surprises. It was the Forza Horizon 5 because I didn't expect it. I was like, I figured they would show a Forza, but I haven't even finished Forza Horizon 4 yet because I'm waiting for my Series X to finish playing it. I wanted to play it on the higher res. I figured I might not go all the way from the beginning to end all over again, so I might as well like stop where I'm at and then continue.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff I still have to do, but this one's coming out this year. This Forza Horizon 5.
It is. I have a theory, a hypothesis.
Yes,
I think that Microsoft may have decided to kind of swap out the release dates of Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon because I think they want their Forza Motorsport to drop at the same time that the new Gran Turismo game drops.
Quite possibly.
I think that may be a at least an influencing factor in terms of when they want to release that. Because that like they totally want that as a competitor to whenever Gran Turismo drops.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I could see it. Because otherwise, the excitement for this one will be high. But if there's something that Sony does with Gran Turismo that's, more epic on a larger scale, and then they... Microsoft could have done it with this game if they held on to it a bit longer, or something even better, perhaps.
Yeah.
Then they would have the extra time to do it. But if they just drop it right away, and then somebody does whatever they're going to do with Gran Turismo, then Gran Turismo's better. Yeah, I could see that. It makes sense.
Well, and regardless of what happens, like if that in fact is the case where both games drop simultaneously, that's just better for the gamer overall because, I mean, if you're a car enthusiast and you love playing those games, you're going to be happier than a tick on a dog. Jeez. Anyway, so they kick off the Xbox conference showing Starfield. Right. And Starfield was announced last year. It really all we saw was a logo and kind of like a little like nebulous outer space shop, and that was about it. Like they didn't have anything to show.
That's all we worked on. We just
I mean, it was clearly meant to just be, hey, we're working on a brand new RPG IP, and so it was interesting because even with what they did show, it wasn't a whole lot. Like we didn't actually really see any kind of gameplay footage. It was almost more of a demonstration of the game engine capabilities.
Right.
What did you think of what they had to show?
I mean, it looked awesome. I mean, all the ray tracing, like on the rocks and stuff. We got to see a little bit of the ship. I mean, the realism of the ship taking off with like the steam coming out, and then the rockets. It looked like a shuttle launch. It did. Instead of like a spaceship shooter where the rockets hit and the thing just takes off and whatnot. This is actually like almost like a launch. So there might be some realism in the physics and whatnot. You saw the whoever the character was put his rifle or his submachine gun on the table, and you could see like on the barrel the ammo, the kind of glowing at some other insignia, like maybe you needed to reload or something. So, I mean, my curiosity is piqued. I mean, it might be pretty broad. It might be a very open, large game. I mean, who knows? I mean, this is a new, I guess, IP by Bethesda. They haven't done something like this in years.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a new IP. What struck me as unique about this particular title was how it didn't have the normal Bethesda edginess to it. Like if you think about like most of the RPGs that they make, and really most of the games overall they make, Bethesda has developed a brand identity or a reputation for making games that have more of an edgy feel to them with a biting sense of humor. You have like these clever shock moments through their games, and it doesn't matter if it's Doom or if it's like Wolfenstein or if it's the Outer Worlds or whatever it is. Like you have all of these different types of games that have that kind of Bethesda like just mark on it, like that seal of approval sort of thing. And what's interesting about Starfield, at least from what little we have seen, is that the overall mood seems to be one of like positive exploration. Like you're definitely on an adventure. There is some sort of sense of danger, like what you were talking about with him putting down the weapon on the table or whatever. But it wasn't like, all hell's broken loose.
Yeah.
You are humanity's last hope. We're sending you out into the galaxy to find the next planet to inhabit. Like it's not like that at all. It actually had a sense of hope to it or a sense of wonderment.
Or exploration and adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. It had kind of more of a positive connotation that I'm not used to necessarily seeing. Normally, again, like if we're talking about Bethesda, I mean, we're talking about Deathloop, we're talking about Dishonored, we're talking about all these different. I mean, even their game that we'll talk about later on, Redfall, was another one. That is hands down, like that is totally Bethesda.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I think Starfield has a lot of potential. I really like the premise of it. We just really need to see some gameplay, I would say.
Right.
To be able to understand kind of what this whole thing is about. Anyway, the second game that they were showing was Stalker 2. And this is part of that Chernobyl series where it's first-person shooter. I'm actually making my way through one of those titles right now, and it has consistently been a looker of a game. Like, I mean, every game that has come out, they've really done a nice job with this realistic graphical tour de force of their game. And it's very different with it being more in Eastern Europe. But what did you think of the trailer?
The trailer was cool. It was a long trailer. Were they speaking Polish?
I think so. Either Polish or Russian. I'm not sure.
It was different in I guess Russian. That would make they were speaking Italian.
Yeah.
For Chernobyl. So I always had to drop my eyes to the subtext or the subtitles instead of keep my eyes up towards what was happening on screen, unless it was nobody was speaking and it was just action, of course. But and that takes me back a little bit. I'm not going to say there's an issue with it, but there's one thing when you're reading text versus appreciating the beauty in the game. And so when there's nothing going on, you were saying, "Oh, look at the brick and look at the floor and look at the ray tracing." And I'm like, "Yeah." Then someone would say something, and I go, "Oh, they're saying it's a nice afternoon and whatever. The music is pleasant."
I only know how to speak English.
I don't know how to speak Chernobylese.
I was really impressed with the technicalities of the game. If you recall, I was pointing out to you at one point there's a character who was dancing to some music he put on, and you had those floorboards that would bend and actually kind of bounce up briefly, like depending on how his foot hit each one of those boards. That was really impressive. The ray tracing was beautiful. I love seeing the accurate shadows cast along the walls and the floors and the different types of props in the environment. And I thought it was a nice approach to the trailer, having like those comrades sitting around a campfire, kind of teasing each other, talking about their day or talking about certain things. And you could tell how the conversation flowed from greeting one another to having some moments of levity, some moments of sorrow or
respect or something.
Or even like some regret, that sort of thing. So by the end of the trailer, it's like you have the main character who has to get up because you have to go meet someone. And I just I don't know. I really thought that was a successful presentation for that game.
It's funny when they were showing this beast come up to you. The guy's telling the story of the guy with the beard.
Yeah.
And then the beast comes right up to the screen and goes, blah, and he does that to one of the...
It cuts back to the campfire and that guy's like teasing his buddies. Like, that was really good. That was really good. The facial animation was also outstanding.
Facial animation was good. The sound was good too. You had that scene where looks like he has an AK and rapid fire, and it sounded very good. One thing though that caught my eye, which they'll probably have it fixed for the game though, is when he reached to pick up something.
Mm-hmm.
You just see his hand go like that, but then something gets picked up like another rifle, and then he would pick up like the scope, but you just saw his hand go like this. And then
I liked it. I mean, the animation was actually cool. How like it had a nice organic flow of him going up, but it didn't connect necessarily with the item,
right?
Which is more than I could say for some other games where like if you pick something up, you don't even see an arm and a hand. It just kind of goes poof and it goes away. You're like, I think I collected that.
Attached to my gun. Got it. Telekinesis.
So they went from that into Sea of Thieves, A Pirate's Life, which I was actually pretty gleefully surprised over with regards to what the expansion was about. And if you watched it, it completely brought in Pirates of the Caribbean from Disney. And I was totally shocked to see Jack Sparrow being represented there. Clearly, you're going to be going on some adventures with Jack Sparrow, and even like a lot of the baddies and villains that we've come to know from the trilogy of Pirates of the Caribbean. Actually, it's not even a trilogy anymore. They have like at least 4 movies, if not 5.
It's
quintology, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay, Russ.
I'm not exactly sure, but I am really excited for this because I feel like this particular expansion addresses a lot of the complaints that I've been having regarding Sea of Thieves, where we simply don't have enough enemy types, right? Like we've talked about, like, oh look, there's yet another undead skeleton that I have to fight, and there's a lack of variety of enemy types in the game. I'm totally fine with undead skeletons, don't get me wrong, but when it's the only thing, it just gets stale after a while. And in this expansion, I mean, we saw like enemy mermaids, we saw the undead in like kind of ghost form on land, we saw the Davy Jones and his whole posse of different underwater like humanoid sea creature pirates and stuff. I mean, this is good. Like all of what I'm seeing, in addition to the undead skeleton enemy types that we've already seen in the game, that makes me very happy, because then depending on where you go, I mean, it's more of a refreshing experience. What were you going to say, Steve?
I'm hoping that it's more than just DLC for that story, because they were advertising it as, yeah, you can get Captain Jack Sparrow and you go on this quest. But everything they were showing was not like the islands that we have come to know and recognize. And so when they show all the underwater life and the new creatures, it all had to do with that DLC. It didn't necessarily have to do with the regular game. So I'm hoping that there are elements that get, spread across into the regular game. Like, you don't have to keep on going to play the DLC again and again and again, only, to get these different enemy types or to get more colorful underwater exploration or different enemy types, whatever.
No, that's a good point. And I'm fine, like, if they decide they only want the narrative aspect of the expansion pack to exist within these new areas and vistas that they were showing, that's totally fine. Provided, like you said, that these other features just populate the overall world of Sea of Thieves. I think that'd be terrific. One of the other things too that you and I talked about was we loved hearing Johnny Depp's voice doing original VO work for his Jack Sparrow Sea of Thieves rendition. And one of the things that I commented to you on was I really hope that the VO carries over into the game itself. So like when you're in gameplay and you're talking with Jack Sparrow, one of the things that I really hope they don't do, this is one of my pet peeves about Sea of Thieves, and I like Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is a really fun game. We've put, I don't even know how many hundreds, if not thousands of hours into this game, but one of the issues that we've always had is how the NPCs that you come across don't really have any kind of VO. Like they make these little weird noises. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to like read all of these paragraphs of text, and I would much rather prefer just to be entertained, be told what is being said. And there's really no excuse for that. It's like, guys, your game is not a hardcore RPG where there's tons and tons and tons of dialogue. And even if it was, it's become standard. Like the expectation nowadays is, if you're doing an RPG, that it's all voice acted. Right. All of your characters, if it's the main character, if it's the NPCs, whatever, you have those performances. And especially like if they have someone like Johnny Depp coming in and Davy Jones, like I want to hear their voices all the time. Like I don't want to hear and that's all I hear. Like, no, I want to see facial animations. I want to see the body performance. I want to hear the VO. So I will be very, very happy if they actually decide to do that for this. And if they don't, it's going to be a bummer, but I'm sure we will still have a good time with what they have.
One thing I was hoping for when they brought up Sea of Thieves was a smart delivery of how the game could be improved, or better looking on the Xbox X,
Series X
and S, because that was the main point of a lot of the games where they say, okay, well, this is going to be maximized on the X and S, and plus the system, that's the system now. It's not the Xbox One, it is the Series X. And so what we saw did look like a crispy version of previous generation, but not necessarily like pushing the system to its limits or any like kind of improvement.
I know for a fact that they did have an upgrade that I personally have installed on my Series X, and so like it has like ray tracing, and especially like when I'm playing the game, like it does look a whole lot more crispy. The thing is that the game itself is intentionally stylized, so it's not like it's going to all of a sudden look photoreal like you're watching like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, because that's just not the art direction. But having said that, I can tell you that the water looks like even more impressive, if you can believe that, and the shadows and that sort of thing. So it just depends. And it's a game, it's interesting because Sea of Thieves have, it's really had multiple expansion packs over the years, and we've enjoyed everything that has come out with it. But it has also been that back and forth with me anyway. I don't know if it's necessarily as much with you, but to have this type of content that was not readily available right when the game was released, it's created kind of this interesting relationship between me and the game, where like I'll go in and I'll play like the new content stuff for a while, and then I'll leave the game. And then they'll announce another DLC or expansion pack or something like that. So then I'll come back and play that, but then I'll leave again. And I just constantly think to myself, what would have happened if like, say 50% of the DLC that we've been enjoying over the years was actually available on launch day itself. So there was simply more to do, more content, that sort of thing. Because I think I would be engaging even more as opposed to this kind of crumb trail that's going on where it's like I come in for a little bit and then I leave. And I come back a little bit and I leave. And
yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth because they're making you come back with all the new content versus if they gave you everything all up front, or mostly everything all up front, then you probably would have done everything and not come back.
Or, I mean, because the other thing too is that like there are still things that I haven't even completed yet from previous DLCs that are still outstanding.
Right.
So I think that the amount that is there definitely would keep me going. And I think it's just a matter of like, well, how much, like if I enter this world where it's like, wow, I don't even think I've like scratched the surface of this versus, I've been everywhere hundreds of times and they've put this additional little part here. Okay, I'll go scope this additional part out, but what else is there to do? But having said that, like it is still fun to occasionally, like I'll meet up with you and we'll grab us, grab a boat and
every few months or so.
Yeah. Battlefield 2042. So this was a game that had nothing pretty much but gameplay itself. They were advertising how you can have 128 players on this kind of like massive online first-person shooter. And it looked like they were having a lot of fun with just making as much chaos as possible. It takes place a little bit into the future, hence the year. And all kinds of different types of vehicles that you can fly or drive, and you can have different payload drops. Definitely crazy kind of weather where like you'd see tornadoes. I don't even know like what city they were fighting in, but like it looked like
a dust storm coming and stuff.
I don't know if they were in Dubai or I couldn't tell, but like there was just a lot of weather features in there, which again is really really cool. There were certain moments such as when the guy jumped off the roof, how he could use his little like flying squirrel outfit to like kind of make his way down through the skyscrapers, which was really cool. It was neat to be able to see how you could have that gameplay taking place more in a vertical space, but then be able to make your way back down without doing like the whole insta death. Like, you fell off a rooftop, you died.
But so they were just advertising the multiplayer. They weren't advertising like a whole new campaign or a story.
And that's one of the questions I have. I don't know if this has a campaign or if it's simply just an online only game.
Interesting.
Have you seen or heard anything about this, Steve?
No.
It's worth looking into because they have had a narrative, I believe, up until this point, right?
For quite a while, yes.
Speaking of narrative and first-person shooters, I don't think that there has been a new Call of Duty announced for this year, has there?
No, but I think that's because it hasn't been a full year since the other one has been out. I think the other one. Well,
didn't the last one come out like in November or December?
Yeah, probably.
They tend to come out right in that time frame, and they come out like every year.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're putting a little bit of extra TLC in this one.
Yeah. Maybe they wanted Battlefield to show their hand first, and then they'll do like a separate like standalone announcement like, oh yeah, here's your Call of Duty. You want a card? Here you go. So that's to take a little look-see. But overall, are you excited about Battlefield 2042?
This one, not so much. I'm big into the campaign, the story. I'm not too big on the multiplayer part of Battlefield.
Okay.
So I'd probably pass on.
Okay.
You?
I'll probably pick it up. I thought that there was actually quite a bit to enjoy with that. I'm curious to see like what kind of large battle mechanics they have in there. It looks like it's designed for that kind of overwhelming visual spectacle. So I'll check it out. Party Animals.
That's one I was a bit curious about. It looks like I was telling you about. It looks kind of like Fall Down Guys.
Kinda.
A bit, except you're stuffed animals and you're wandering around and headbutting everybody. And I thought, it most likely is like a 4-player game. Maybe
it's a party game.
It's a party game, which I think that would be kind of fun.
I think so too.
The graphics weren't half bad either. I mean,
they were pretty good, weren't they?
Pretty darn clear, yeah.
Like the ray tracing makes them look like these even more fuzzy, plush, lovable, stuffed animal types.
And they're, I mean, I'm not going to say they're evil, but they're just kind of like these wonderful teddy bear looking things, and they just push each other over the edge and like start headbutting each other and slapping each other. Like, what in the world is happening?
Well, one of the things that I thought was so funny, and this was intentional from the team, like this was part of their selling point, was like the appendages are so disconnected from their bodies. Like it's this weird, like, I don't know, like you see them moving around and it makes me wonder if you make your character move a direction, is there like a slight delay in the character responding? Like maybe like its torso begins to move in that direction, but then its limbs kind of linger behind. Because if you notice, like they kind of like they look drunk. They were kind of like, and then they finally come over to someone, and they go boof and punch somebody, and then they fall off or whatever. Like
I almost wonder if it's because they are supposed to be stuffed animals, maybe, but they have no backbone or skeleton. So it's like almost like you're making this thing walk with like its legs. But
it's almost like a marionette in a way, without the strings. Like he's just like. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a fun game to play.
Yeah.
I definitely look forward to playing that with you. I think that getting some of our friends like Nick, for instance. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Nick. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Somerville. So this was the one.
I know which one this is.
This is like the 2.5D.
Right. Kind of emotional, kind of heavy set.
It's the family that's trying to survive. Remember how we were talking about how it reminded us a little bit of Limbo and Inside?
Yes.
It makes sense because the co-founder of those games is the one behind this game.
That's crazy. I mean, Limbo, I can't play that. I can watch those games and I can be like, no, you missed that thing. Why don't you try?
It's creepy, yeah.
Shoving the box.
Oh, no, that's not a box. What is that?
So, I mean, Limbo was awesome. Limbo was really good.
And if Limbo was awesome, then Inside was spectacular.
Indeed.
Which it was.
Yes, it was.
You watch me play that game.
Yeah, that's a game I have to watch. I don't think I can play it. So I'd have to watch you play this one.
Such a good game. Yeah, I will definitely be picking that up. I'm a big fan of both of those titles, and I'm sure this one will just be equally as fun and amazing. Halo Infinite. So, last year, Microsoft was pretty proud of revealing Halo Infinite to an audience that honestly had a lukewarm reception to what was shown.
This is it.
And I think that was a bit of a wake-up call for the team, and they made a very wise decision to delay the release, because that was going to be a launch title for the Xbox Series X.
It was.
And so 1 year later, thereabouts, we are presented with an update to it. And so they were showcasing some more of the campaign narrative, but they also showed a lot of the online multiplayer experience. What are your thoughts on that game, Steve? Being as he is quite the Halo fan.
Well, I was torn, honestly. It did look fun. It did look like it, familiar, I should say. But it did look a bit too dated also. Like the environments just didn't come out and pop and grab you. They weren't very colorful. Master Chief looked great, and it was great hearing the voice actor who's behind him. I liked the sound. I liked hearing the little narrator announcements if you did something really cool. No scope. I'm like, that's what I say. They're listening to me. And they're showing off the different technology you have, like the Widowmaker, sort of thing where he grapples up and he's hanging in the air and then pow, pops somebody as he's falling down. So that all looked familiar, and it did look fun. It just looked like it was nothing new, really. I wanted to see something, for example, like the plasma grenade. I wanted to see like a more graphical explosion or something, or I wanted to really hear and feel the different sounds in the guns. And even though it looked fun, it just still looked like there was something missing, or there's something to be desired.
I think one of the things that Halo struggles with is that due to its color palette, when they have a camera that is going through the action, it doesn't represent the game as well as how the game actually looks when you're playing it. You're in first person perspective and you're going through and everything else. So it makes me think about how when you're playing the game, I think that you are going to see a noticeable bump in quality with regards to the graphics when you're playing this game. Because I agree. I mean, and it's always been the case where like you see, kind of those panning camera shots. Like they essentially they're using like this in-game camera. Like if you're using Unreal Engine or one of the other engines, usually they'll have some sort of camera that you can create. But the problem is that sometimes, the game is designed specifically for like, what do you see, right? If you're doing a third person game or a first person game or something like that, like everything that you see from that vantage point, the art department is like just making everything look as optimized and amazing from that specific vantage point as possible. So when you break that and you start going, hey, look at all this cool stuff everywhere, then suddenly you're like, wait, well, how does that look like that? Why is it, So for me, when I was watching the gameplay, the online multiplayer gameplay, I was pumped. I actually, once again, I got feelings of the Halo of old. Like this was a proper Halo gameplay experience. And that made me really happy because to me, as far as I'm concerned, there needed to be a return to basics in order to lay down a foundation again, because I feel like they kind of got away from that a bit, especially in Halo 5. And so I want to have more of that sensation of being in that world of Halo, like Halo 1, 2, 3, Halo ODST, Halo 4 was great. So
I didn't care for Halo 4. Right? You liked Halo 4 a lot more than I did.
Well, and if we're talking about online multiplayer, like what was it? Halo Noble Reach. Halo Reach had hands down some of the best online multiplayer gameplay. That's when they introduced the whole assassination feature.
They should have a. Nah, that doesn't come off. It doesn't ring. But no, I was gonna say they should
have a pantsing feature where they go behind Master Chief and they just pants them.
They should have Halo. Something about the Noble series, because I mean that's all like on their ships and like on their armor. It says Noble. Like, they should have like a Noble team or something.
Well, I believe that was the team in Halo Reach.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they should have like a. That should be the
like a sequel. You want a sequel, Steve?
Within the title somewhere, maybe.
But no, I think that the gameplay looks like a lot of fun. We'll have to wait and see, like overall in terms of the graphics and stuff. I mean, honestly, I think it's going to look great. I think it's going to play really well. And in terms of the narrative, I was relieved to see more of Master Chief in his element and kind of pushing more of that narrative. They were able to recruit back the lead writer from the Bungie team to help out with this particular game, which is a huge thumbs up from us as far as we are concerned, because that is one of the it's one of the pillars that made the original Halo trilogy and ODST as amazing as it was. I mean, that wasn't the only pillar. You had several pillars that contributed to the success of those games. But I was really happy to see him. I mean, it was so funny because he comes up on stage. I'm like,
I've seen that guy before
he
somewhere.
looks familiar. Who is? I'm like, oh, and I didn't recognize him because the last time I saw him, he was wearing glasses. So we were pretty excited for that. So I mean, would you say that you are cautiously optimistic about this game?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or would you go farther than that and say you're excited to play this game?
I would say no. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
I'm glad they're continuing the Halo series. It was encouraging to hear. I'm terrible with the names, but the gentleman you were just speaking about, he said Halo is all about the Master Chief, and I'm like, that's true. Yes, sir, it is.
Yep.
And I definitely got that impression here and everything, that was being said.
Essentially, having him back acted as a recalibration for the franchise.
Yeah.
In terms of story. Because, that was one of the glaring issues that I had, especially with Halo 5. I was like, okay, this doesn't feel like Master Chief
where are we
at
going?
all. Why am I dividing my... It was weird because they tried to do what they did in, I believe it was Halo 3, where you had the Arbiter and you had Master Chief, and it kind of went... Actually, I think they started doing it in Halo 2.
Right.
But it was more successful. Like I accepted that more in terms of the story because you gained perspective with the Covenant and what was going on that side of things, in addition to Master Chief and Earth and all that. So it just seemed to flow really naturally back and forth versus this new one where they almost try and make Master Chief out to be almost like a villain of sorts. And then you had this other team, which again, nothing against those characters personally, but at the same time, it's like, look, I bought this game to play as Master Chief. It would literally be like if you had, any other character from another franchise that all of a sudden only gets 50% screen time because they want to introduce some brand new character that doesn't nearly have the screen presence or charisma.
It's like playing a Mario game and then you're just some turtle.
Yeah. You're kind of okay.
Sweet.
So another title that I'm very much looking forward to is Replaced, which is coming out in 2022. That was the other 2.5D
that looks
game.
good.
It has that 16-bit pixelated kind of flat graphical look, but it exists within this almost 2.5D world.
Right.
And I want to say that they showed this game 2 years ago.
I want to say they did because I remember talking to you about it, and they showed this plethora of 2D or 2.5D, and I was like, man, they're doing. That was right around the time I think that what's the game when you're the bioluminescent dude jumping around
Ori?
the rain? Ori. That was right around the time they were showing Ori, and I was like, man, there's these 2D, 2.5D games are looking awesome because there's just so much stuff happening in the background that's grabbing your attention, and there's stuff happening in the foreground. Anyway, but the way they showed that one kind of just reached out for you in a way, almost popped out of your TV and drew you in, of sorts. So I'm looking forward to that one.
There was a level of creativity with the art direction in that game that grabbed me immediately. I mean, I was hooked the first time I had seen it. Oh, was that you?
That was me.
I thought you were goosing
me. No, that was
you hooked me?
The other hand.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
In between the fondling and the gropage. Yes.
I was looking for pillows. Found something else.
Throw pillows. Anyway, I was very much taken with the visual style of this game. And what was interesting too, it's weird, but watching the trailer, I got like my gamer instinct could identify that there was a lot in the secret sauce of this game that I think we're going to really enjoy. It's hard to describe, but watching what they had, there was just a wonderful variety of different situations that the character was in. And I want to say it's like a cyberpunk type of setting. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of what they were going for. But it was so cool because like there was that one awesome shot of him climbing up the side of like a hotel sign or something, and it was like dark and rainy, and like you had some really cool like ray traced lights that come in and just kind of showed off the building that was different looking than the character itself. The character was real pixelated, but the building wasn't, and I just love it. I think that it's a really neat vision overall. It's unfortunate that we have to wait until 2022. However, I feel like it's one of those games where like, hey, you take as much time as you want, just let it get nice and polished. Put a spit shine on that.
Yeah, I'm taking a while beating these games that I have. So
you have a mountain of games that you have not beaten yet.
So it's going to be a while anyway. I can wait, Russ.
If I have a foothill, you have a mountain. You have Mount Everest.
Yep. I've climbed Everest, Russ.
No, you have not. Outer Worlds 2.
That was probably the best, most humorous something. That was funny. Cleverest.
Mm-hmm. No, it was really cool because they didn't show an ounce of gameplay.
They didn't.
This like really high octane. You can tell they spent a pretty penny on these pre-rendered cinematics.
Sure.
But the whole marketing approach to this was brilliant. It was one of those things that like we as the gaming community, we always think about like especially if there are certain games that kind of miss the mark in terms of trying to build hype for itself. And it was fantastic hearing this voiceover guy just talk about like, oh yeah, slow motion running. That'll be good for sales numbers and lens flares. Lots and lots of lens flares. Like it just went through the whole thing. Even in the beginning where it's like, it starts out peaceful to be able, I can't remember exactly what he said.
He even said something about, we can't show you gameplay because we have no idea how it's going to look.
Yeah. We reveal the backside of our hero because the hero's not done yet. Just the whole thing was very much self-aware of the state of which, like how a lot of these game trailers are made, but also it was very self-aware of the fact that it was not ready to be shown itself. They just wanted to have a further announcement that, hey, we're making the sequel, guys.
Exactly.
My hope, though, is that humor translates into the sequel itself, because I beat the first game, Outer Worlds, excuse me. And aside from it being way too short, like it was like just starting to get really good. I was getting more invested in my crew, and all of a sudden the game just ended. I was like, oh man, like I thought I had another like 50 hours to go or something. The other thing about it was it had a bit of an off-kilter, eccentric sense of humor to it, which was good. But I want it to go to 11 in terms of like what we saw in this particular trailer, because that type of humor would be absolutely fantastic throughout the entire game. Do you have any other thoughts on that there, Steve?
No, Russ.
Moving right along. Okay, so one of the juggernauts of the show, Forza Horizon 5. We have mentioned this a little bit earlier in the program, but Forza Horizon 5 looks absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous.
Was it me though, or was the demo pixelating? Because I watched it again after I watched it with you, and it was still doing the same thing. So it wasn't a connection issue, but it seemed like either they were doing dust effects as you were going through like the rainforest or the dirt roads, or the demo was pixelating, kind of artifacting in a way.
I think it's the video. The video itself.
It didn't happen all the way through. It just happened on certain scenes, like when you were driving through that river, for example, towards the beginning.
It's the video. It's the codec. Especially because, like, if you play Forza Horizon 4, which I know you have, you don't see any of that whatsoever. And especially now that you're going into Xbox Series X, where they've got the extra horsepower and they've got the ray tracing, all that. You're not going to see that at all, especially when you're playing on 4K. Not a problem at all. So that was a great example. In fact, I think I elbowed you during their demo of Forza Horizon 5, where they talked about photogrammetry and how looking at the various types of boulders and rock formations on the mountains, and even the vegetation that exists throughout the world itself. All of that was done using that technique. And I think the results really speak for themselves when you look at it. I mean, there were certain shots where like the camera was stationary, and you heard one of the team members talk about the process of what's going on. And all of a sudden the camera then moves and you see a car go by and you realize, oh, this is gameplay. This is not even a cinematic for the game. It was crazy impressive. Like this is what gets me excited about the future of games as it applies to 3D modeling, is that when you have something like photogrammetry in there, you have these environments that all of a sudden take that next big leap forward in terms of graphics fidelity.
Well, you also saw too, there was a scene where you were in this dune buggy and you went off a jump and you're falling down, and the way, I don't know what it was, if it was like HDR effect or draw distance or just how smooth the frame rate was of you launching towards the ground.
There's that sense of inertia, like you almost got butterflies in your stomach as you watched this thing go.
Yeah, man, puckered my butthole a little bit there.
Oh my.
Anyhow,
so they ended up having their one more thing moment, which I'm glad that they do. I'm glad that like Apple has made this very popular with, oh, there's just one more thing. And they were able to kick it back over to Bethesda, which I thought was really nice because Bethesda is their most recent acquisition.
Yeah.
Bethesda is a huge publisher that has an incredible catalog of games. And so it was cool because I feel like this was a great send-off that communicates that they are, in fact, working on new IPs. And so for them to have Redfall be their final game. Now, this game trailer itself, it was just all pre-rendered cinematics. However, what's fun about the characters is you can tell it was a game made by Arcane Studios. Like when I was looking at the cinematics, I was like, my goodness, like these characters look like they stepped out of Dishonored, which is a good thing. Like I'm a big fan of the art direction when it comes to Dishonored, and having it be more of like this kind of inner city vampire environment, you know, I was like, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. And all the characters looked like they were a lot of fun. You could tell that each character kind of has its own kit,
little properties,
little ability sets.
That was a game I really wanted to see the gameplay on because I in the beginning I couldn't tell, or what are we fighting? Are we fighting more zombies? Or are we fighting other creatures? And it wasn't towards the end where that vampire that was flying with kind of like the orange glowing arm sort of thing. I was like, yep, that one's a vampire right there. And then it was revealed that, yeah, you are fighting vampires. But with all the abilities that everybody had, I thought this would have been the game to show some play, not just have a pre-rendered cinematic.
Do you remember if they showed a release date for that game? Or did they just simply say like 2022?
I think they just said it was 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably earlier in development. But if I had to guess, it's probably a first-person shooter.
You would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would think, because, I mean, like they did Prey, they did, like I said, the Dishonored series, both of which are first-person. If it's third-person, I think it would probably work out okay, but I think first-person is what I'm hoping for a game like that. I think that'd be fun, especially if you have like 4-player co-op. That'd be cool.
Yeah, or it could be like that game. I'm not even going to try and remember it, but it was
Left 4 Dead.
Was it Left 4 Dead when it was kind of like this bird's eye view, but not so high like Diablo 2.
Oh, you're talking about The Reckoning.
Maybe that's it, but it was just close enough so you could see everything that was happening on. It was
screen. Like an isometric perspective, looking down, and like you had a 4-player co-op and making your way through like graveyards and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that was The Reckoning.
Okay. Yeah. It might be, I mean, I'd be okay if it was like that.
Had some cool weapons and then upgrades you pick up along the way and stuff. I don't think it's going to be like that. I have a feeling it's either going to be first person or it's going to be a third person perspective. experience. But regardless, I'm looking forward to it. And you noticed too that they were wearing t-shirts that had the slogan from the game itself. Right. It had like this really cool looking like vampire mouth, but it looked like he just got like shot in the mouth. So like half his teeth was like, Puh! And I think it says bite back at the bottom. I will buy one of those shirts. Just FYI, if Microsoft or Bethesda makes that shirt available, I will definitely pick one of those up because I really liked how that looked. That was cool.
Good shirt to wear on Halloween.
Absolutely. Pivoting away from the Xbox conference and going more into Square Enix, I was pleasantly surprised as to how strong of a showing they had. And they kicked things off with Guardians of the Galaxy. And not only that, but like it was like an in-depth gameplay demo. Like you and I were very impressed.
Yeah. That was crazy long. No. And it's its own look too. Yeah. So I haven't read the. You know what? I should next time there's a Dallas Expo. I'm just gonna go pilfer through the comics that they have and.
Well, Steve, next time just come with me to the local comic book shop, Steve.
That too maybe.
I'll show you around. I'll introduce you to some people.
How's it going? I'm new here. I don't need any help right now. I'm just gonna look.
He's looking around with some comics.
Hey, can we find something? You guys got any comic books?
Yeah, looking around. Yeah, we got a couple
here and there. So they might look like they do in the comic a little bit more, maybe. I mean, they have their own. The look is different than they look in the movies.
And the writer even mentioned. He said how these characters look different than the comic book characters and the movie characters. They wanted their own original take on the whole thing, and that's risky. I gotta say. Because like one of the things that I've talked about in the past was like with regards to Marvel's Avengers, for example, I really feel like because the MCU has done such a bang up job with over the past 10 plus years of cultivating these characters so that the likenesses of Chris Hemsworth, of Robert Downey Jr., of Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, you know, all these different actors that have played these roles for years and years and years, and especially given the timing of the release date of the Marvel's Avengers game, my hope was that they would actually get the permission or basically be able to use the likeness of those actors and even maybe have them come in and do all the VO, because who wouldn't want to play a game like that? Like if I'm playing as Robert Downey Jr., who's Tony Stark as Iron Man, and I'm hearing his voice and everything else, sign me up. Oh yeah. Paul Bettany is coming back in to reprise his role as Jarvis. Yes, please. But they didn't do that. They decided to go with more of an original approach to the character art direction. And I think it was kind of it was met with mixed results. That was not the case with Guardians of the Galaxy, in my opinion. When I was looking at the art direction for the characters, I really liked what I saw. What did you think?
I did, but I also thought that the voice actors who were representing the characters seemed more like the actors.
It was in the same vein, wasn't it?
Yeah. Versus the Avengers, it seemed like the actors were the actors they used were trying to be like the actors we saw on screen, and so that took away something from me. As with Avengers, to me that seemed to make it more distant. As opposed to, close. But this, since the personalities were really similar, I was right with it.
Yeah. And they like we already mentioned, they showed a lot. I mean, they even showed the title screen where like they're all hanging out in kind of the lounge portion of their ship, and there is humor all over the place. Like it was a feast for the eyes to be able to look around and see what little nuggets they've placed everywhere. I think you even mentioned that the dialogue, the scripts that we got to listen to as they're playing the game was really fun. I mean, it was almost more fun to listen to them banter as opposed to like just walking down the environments. But thankfully, the environments and the visuals themselves were also visually arresting. Like, I was like, wow, this is a game I could see myself really enjoying getting lost in.
I think though, This one, I think you got to be a little bit careful with because there's only so many choices that you can choose as far as how to progress. So it was showing you, okay, you can listen to Rocket or you can listen to...
they have dialogue trees.
Right, yeah, dialogue trees. So there's not an unlimited amount of choices. I mean, you can choose one or then you can play the game over and choose another. But after that, what do you choose?
Did you ever play any of the Mass Effect games?
Yes.
Okay, because that is like right up Mass Effect's alley in terms of like...
You knew I played Mass Effect.
Honestly, I couldn't remember if you had or not. I played Mass Effect 1 and 2, but I don't know if you had ended up playing it or not. Did you play both?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good, Steve. That's really good.
Told you about it when I bought them, Russ.
But that was one of the things that I was... really, I mean, honestly, it was one of my favorite features about the Mass Effect series. And even like with other games that BioWare did is they made that whole like, oh, you have a choice between these different options. And, based on what selection you make, it'll have some sort of bearing on like the narrative outcome down the road. So, which is great because I think that's the same kind of thing with Guardians of the Galaxy where you have this, crew of misfits that are a family, and what happens in the family is you constantly have little moments of bickering or teasing or supporting one of the family members that is down on their luck or maybe had a loss of some kind. There are all those different traits that go into it. And I don't think it was lost on the development team at all. I think that they identified that as something that was kind of like one of the core components to the foundation of their game.
I wasn't too fond of all the Final Fantasy stuff, surprisingly, though, that Squaresoft brought out. I was really hoping that they were going to show the next iteration of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And they didn't show anything. They're like, hey, all this stuff you played in the past, well, we're bringing it back. How's that? Well, okay, cool, but what about the continuation?
It's a good question for sure. And I think that they are probably met with this creative challenge where they've set this visual benchmark really high. Like as you're playing through, as I know you have with Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's a gorgeous game. They've done a lot to it. They've completely redone the battle mechanics. It's no longer like the turn-based type of system. And I think as they continue on, especially now that they have left Midgar and now they're in more of like this open world space where they not so much can they rely on the rinse and repeat of, okay, now you're going to go back down this tunnel that you went through 5 times already. And, I don't think they can rely on that as much. So it is going to be interesting to see what the release schedule ends up being, because I definitely would like to be able to play the sequels. It's not even really a sequel. It's just the continuation of the story sooner rather than later.
I would have liked a taste though, even if it was like 2023. Just for them to kind of put it out there like, hey, something else for you to look forward to. I think that would have just been the icing on the cake.
They did show Legend of Mana, which I was particularly interested in because I have never played Secret of Mana, which is like apparently like one of the best RPGs ever. Like every one of my friends who finds out that I have not played that game, it looks like they almost have a heart attack because it's that good of a game. And I don't think you've played it either.
I haven't.
And so Legend of Mana, I'm assuming, is the sequel to
Is it
Secret
Mana
of Mana.
or Mana?
I don't know. Mana?
Mono y mono?
I'm not sure. But I am looking forward to that. I at the very least, will be able to perhaps get a flavor of what Secret of Mana was all about. And then finally on my list, there was a game called Forspoken. And it was crazy because I almost missed it. Like it was at the end of the Square Enix presentation, and they were giving a montage of different games that are coming soon, that sort of thing. And they had this really brief shot of like a logo that says Forspoken, and they had like barely like a few seconds of gameplay animation, but it was just enough for me to like pause the show and rewind and go, what was that? And so then I did a search afterwards, and I don't know how I missed this, But they had actually come out with a trailer for this game back in March of this year. This game looks legit. It has this female protagonist. It looks like it's a third-person action-adventure game. Maybe she's a sorceress or something. I'm not exactly sure. She's got these like kind of supernatural abilities. And the world itself just looks terrific. I mean, it has that kind of hyper-real look to it. I wouldn't be surprised if they use some form of photogrammetry in that as well. But I was really surprised, honestly, that they didn't have more time dedicated to just showing more of this particular game, because I was sold, honestly. I was like, man, I want to play this game.
Man, I want to play something.
What'd you think?
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a letdown that they didn't show more of the game, but that they slapped you with it towards the end. Like, hey, so everything we just showed you, we're like, you didn't show us that. No, I was watching closely. I wasn't sleeping. You didn't want, and then we had to look it up. We're like, yeah, they played it, a while ago. But it was odd that they just, I don't know why that chose what they chose to do it that way.
Well, it seemed like there were a few, different studios that did that. I mean, Microsoft did the same thing. Like, for instance, like with Forza Motorsport, we were totally expecting to see much more footage of that, and instead they kind of waited till the end and they had that little montage like, oh yeah, and then we have this other game over here and you're like, wait, hold on a second, I wanted to see more of that. And I think honestly it has to do with shifts in production. I think 2020 was just, it was crazy in terms of these studios trying to stay on target and meet their deadlines and milestones, and maybe there are certain things that cause delays or whatnot, but at the same time, it's not as though there's nothing to look forward to, because there is a healthy amount. And again, I have to stress that we haven't seen Sony's hand yet. Like, that was the big thing about this, was that we saw some of these other studios, but Sony has yet to really come forward. I mean, we did see Horizon Forbidden West before the whole E3 show commenced. But Nintendo was there. They did their whole Nintendo Direct thing. Really, the games that stood out to me, Metroid, was it Dread, was it?
I think so, yeah.
Apparently, it's like the first new Metroid title in 19 years. And so I'm actually looking forward to picking that game up, because I've been wanting a Metroid title for my Switch.
Doesn't Nick like Metroid?
Oh, he loves Metroid. We have a number of friends who are big Metroid fans. There was a sequel to Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I'm also looking forward to picking up. Apparently, that's not going to be available till 2022 at the earliest. It may even get pushed to 2023. But that was a game that I was looking forward to. And they were showing the latest edition of Tekken to the Super Smash Brothers Ultimate title. I still have not picked up that game. And it's so funny because they keep adding more and more characters that I love. And so it's like, one of these days I'm going to pick this thing up. And it was really funny because there has been a long time where I keep waiting for the game to go on sale. And I don't think it ever really does. I'm thinking, man, why doesn't this game ever go on sale? Like, it's been out for years now. Well, I mean, it's making more sense because it's like, my goodness, the roster is huge. I don't even know how many characters they now have in this title, but I'll say it now. I will pick it up. I just don't know when.
I think that's what you said last year.
I know. But don't worry. I'm tenacious.
I'm not worried.
That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm and consider becoming a monthly contributor. You'll get exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it helps us continue doing what we love to do. Also, make sure you tickle that subscribe button, maybe poke that notification bell on YouTube. That way you will not miss a single Joygasm episode that drops once a week. You can also do a search for us at Joygasm TV on your various social media platforms of choice. Last but not least, do a search for Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We will see you all next week.